Now, thousands of protesters have confronted police in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, after scores of people were hurt in clashes last night. The country's president named a senior official to organise peace talks with the opposition after the worst violence in the city for 2 months. This report by our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Jonathan Miller, does contain some images which some viewers may find distressing.
The icy breath of dawn brought cold comfort to Kiev. The carcasses of torched police vehicles lay smashed and scattered, some still burning after the fiercest clashes in 2 months of protest. The battle for the soul of Ukraine is being fought out on the streets of the capital. This protest in defiance of draconian new anti-protest laws approved by a divisive president who does not like dissent. As stun grenades resounded, Molotovs rained down on police outside Dynamo Kiev Stadium in laser-lit mayhem. Here, a cowering police tortoise is pelted. Its robocops are set ablaze. A relentless onslaught of cobblestones ensues. Hefty rocks pickaxed from the streets. In the chaos that raged throughout the night, at least 200 Ukrainians were injured. And as the United States pleaded for de-escalation, an opposition leader warned his country was on the verge of civil war. Yesterday afternoon, former boxing heavyweight champion of the world turned opposition leader Vitaly Klitschko tried to stop the fight. As police and protesters faced off, he towered over them, but they took no notice. He grabbed a loudhailer and headed back to address the mob. A powder fire retardant was aimed straight at him as he tried in vain to extinguish the flames of conflict. Today, speaking to camera in a party video press release, Mr. Klitschko sounded like he'd snapped.
This government has declared war on the people of Ukraine, which has brought about terrible consequences. I call upon all citizens and patriots to defend our country and our future. Get in your cars, share taxis, buses. You are needed here.
A peaceful pro-democratic protest headed to the European Union's Kiev office this morning, demanding EU support in their battle against encroaching dictatorship as they see it. The man they brand dictator appeared on TV tonight and called for compromise and calm. But until the pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych repeals the repressive laws he passed last week, the pro-EU protests will probably intensify. These the scenes from Kiev this afternoon. The demonstrations began when the president walked away from an integration pact with Europe. Now his intransigence has triggered wider outcry. The protests now hijacked by the violent radical right wing and threatening to plunge the borderlands of Europe into turmoil.
Jonathan Miller, well, joining us now from Kiev, Eugenia Tymoshenko, daughter of jailed former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. Thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Tymoshenko. Things have clearly taken a terrible turn in Kiev, with even Mr. Klitschko unable to persuade the protesters to stop. Have more radical elements taken hold of the opposition?
Well, what can we say is that for 2 months people stood on the freezing cold despite the weather, despite the deaf ear of the government and the regime, and none of the demands of the people were fulfilled. Of course, on the 16th, on the Black Thursday, as we call it, we saw a pro-presidential majority just vote with their hands, breaking all the constitutional norms, all the reglement of the parliament, and voting for the dictatorship laws, and that's the whole world, the democratic leaders call it now. I think that people who are standing here waiting for some change for better to happen, and also for those who are responsible for violence to answer to the court and to the justice, which has not happened, taking to parliament to demand these laws to be revoked. And as they went up to the Rada, they were stopped by the police. And of course, people just really lost their patience. And of course, it hasn't been organized by opposition or by anybody else. It's been obviously the reaction of desperation against what is government doing to all of us.
There doesn't look as if Mr. Yanukovych is going to give in. I mean, there is the possibility of these talks. Do you have any hope for talks with Yanukovych?
Well, the talks with Yanukovych were planned for the last 3 years, and especially before the Vilnius summit. And now I think his proposition of the talks and the actual committee that he is not part of is started negotiations now in Kiev today. But we think it's just another timeout that is looked for Yanukovych to kind of calm the people and make sure it stops.
What do you want Europe to do?
Well, we're calling for your help, really, and for involvement, also for the sanctions that could be really aimed at those who are responsible for the violence. Now, as we stand here, as we speak, the police is shooting the journalists. So they're shooting directly into their eyes, into their cameras, and those protesters who are there, they've been faced by the bullets and by beating, etc. And of course, there's journalists, foreign journalists, there are those who are there just peaceful demonstrators who are watching. So we really need your help in involving the government to take away the troops from the streets.
Your call will be heard, and I'm grateful to you indeed for standing in the very cold weather there. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.